Well, it's the end of a decade, and after each decade, it's always fun to look back at some of the best moments of those 10 years and see what's worth celebrating going forward. Everyone loves going to a good 80s party or having a 90s movie night, but what is it about the 2010s that will be fondly remembered like that? I'm sure 30 or 40 years from now, people are going to have 2010s parties like they have 80s or 90s parties now. I want to look back at some of those moments that might be celebrated from this past decade. This has been an amazing decade for movies. The Marvel Cinematic Universe took place most of this decade, and that completely changed the way that we look at film. Then, of course, there are huge pop culture staples like the John Wick series, James Cameron's Avatar, Inception, and even my personal favorite, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. We even got a brand new Star Wars trilogy this decade, along with a couple of spin off films and a TV series. And we can't forget about that classic animated trilogy, How to Train Your Dragon. TV is now the biggest and best it's ever been. TV shows even get a movie budget nowadays. TV series like Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, Rick and Morty, Stranger Things, the CW Arrowverse have all come out this decade, and they're some of the most iconic TV shows now, and ever will be. This decade also saw the rise of the streaming service. We now watch TV a very different way than we did before, and that's because of what came out this decade. Whether it's Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, even now Disney Plus, we now can watch TV whenever we want in whatever show or movie that we want. Video games are now taken much more seriously as an art form and as entertainment. Some video games even tell a better story than some movies or TV shows that are out now. Games like The Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption, Overwatch, Splatoon all came out this decade. Even some of the new tech in the gaming world that came out this decade is revolutionary. The Nintendo Switch, you can play it on your TV and take it on the go. And of course, VR gaming is taking off way more than it ever has. Even tabletop gaming is bigger than it ever was. Tabletop gaming used to just be something that people were made fun of for doing, like Dungeons and Dragons, or household things like Monopoly. But now, thousands upon thousands of games are being made every year by either big names or indie studios. There are even more being kickstarted every year. There's even a web series called Tabletop just celebrating the world of tabletop gaming. And Magic the Gathering, even though it came out decades ago, is now the most successful it's ever been. Pop culture and the way that we look at it primarily started around the 80s, back when movies were all original. And because of Empire Strikes Back, people started celebrating what they were fans of with t-shirts and lunchboxes and action figures. The 80s probably was, and still is, the best decade for pop culture ever. The 90s carried on some of those trends, mainly with children's entertainment like the Disney Renaissance and 90s Nicktoons, and even movies like Space Jam. And then the 2000s came, and for whatever reason, there was a pop culture wasteland. Everything was either now a remake that wasn't as good as the original, or everything needed to be dark and gritty and serious, like when the X-Men wore black leather instead of blue and yellow uniforms. But this decade, the 2010s, saw a major comeback for pop culture. TV is easily the best it's ever been. Movies are either now more original, or when they are a part of another franchise, they continue things on, like Jurassic World or Star Wars, rather than just straight remaking them. Gaming is absolutely bigger than it's ever been. Plus, there's been other pop culture staples introduced to us this past decade, like Funko Pop figures or even those pesky fidget spinners. Before, people were picked on and made fun of for going to a convention, and there's only Comic-Con and maybe like a Star Trek convention, but now there's at least 5 conventions in each major city, and they're always sold out, they're always packed, and everyone loves cosplaying and going to conventions just to show how much they love pop culture and how much they love what they're fans of. We live in a time now, because of this past decade, where it's okay to let your nerd flag fly and show the world what you're a fan of in pop culture. It's easily been one of the best decades for pop culture ever, and probably ever will be. I think it's set the course for future decades to be similar. It's easily been the best decade for pop culture since the 80s. Here's to the 2010s. Thank you for bringing us amazing movies, TV shows, games, and overall pop culture. I can't wait to see what the 2020s have in store for us. Let me know what your favorite parts have been from this past decade and what you're looking forward to in the 2020s. Also, don't forget to follow Nonstop Nerd on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and go to nonstopnerd.com for more on all things nerdy.